My name is Dr. Sarah Jarvis, and I have the privilege of being your moderator today. I've been a family doctor for 29 years. I am not an expert like any of our esteemed panel, but I am a generalist. I've looked after women who have concerns about their fertility and who have an interest in their fertility for the last 29 years. Clearly, looking at me, I qualified when I was 3 years old. So, we are here at the Gideon Richter event, The Pressure Paradox. Can egg freezing tune out the tick-tock of the biological clock? And of course, we have heard so much about the biological clock in recent years, usually in some huge media headline. We have put the biological clock on pause. Women can have babies whenever they want to. Bridget Nielsen, Madonna, no problem. All these mixed messages coming out, but at the same time, as we're going to be hearing later, women in fact are having fewer and fewer children. And we want to explore why that is and what the options are. So it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce our experts in the fertility space. Each of our experts here today has a different perspective on the topic of fertility, and particularly on the topic of egg freezing. So it gives me great pleasure. Down at our end, we have Elisa. Elisa there should be wearing two hats. She has taken one of them off, and for today, she is putting a different one on because she is a gynecologist and associate professor at IfWH, Zaragoza, or as she would put it, Zaragoza, which is a much nicer way of describing it, in Spain. She is a healthcare professional in her own right, but she has come here today to provide her personal perspective on her decision to undertake egg freezing for herself. So today, she is here, unusually for her, as a patient or representing the patient. Then we have Dr. Julie Neckerbroek, who is a psychologist at the UZ Brussels Center for Reproductive Medicine in Belgium. She will be taking us through some of the major issues that women feel, as well as taking part in our panel discussion. Valérie Blanchet is a midwife at HUCP at the Hôpital Cochin in Paris, and she'll be providing not the perspective of the midwife who is there at the bedside when a woman is pushing and saying pant, 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 but from the other end of the perspective. And Joyce Harper, another woman who qualified when she was 3, because for over 30 years, I believe, she has been an expert in reproductive science. She is professor of reproductive science and head of the research department of reproductive health, as well as the IfWH director of education and head of the reproductive science group at the UCL Institute of Women's Health in the United Kingdom. You can imagine putting that many letters after your name. So the aim of the panel today is to provide a balanced perspective. We are not here to say that one solution is best. We have one theme running today, and that is that all women have the right to make an informed decision. And in order to make an informed decision, they have to know the facts, and they have to know the accurate facts. So we want to think about perhaps how knowing those accurate facts about egg freezing today and how very different it is from many years ago can contribute to alleviating some of the pressures that are felt by women, but maybe in some respects adding to it. The average age of motherhood, as we're going to be hearing, in the UK, according to the Office of National Statistics, has been rising year by year. And the same thing is happening across Europe. We have a representative here from Spain where they have just passed the age 30 barrier. The average age of first motherhood is now over 30 in Spain, and the same thing in Italy. In a number of European countries, this continues to happen. At the same time, they are having fewer children. So this is a mean, of course. Many women give birth later, many women give birth earlier, but those averages really, I think, do speak. The celebrity culture means that women think it's easy, but as we're going to be hearing, over the age of 35, certainly the likelihood of getting pregnant falls dramatically, and at the same time, the likelihood of having a problem with that pregnancy due to a genetic abnormality and not achieving a live birth of a healthy baby increases. So egg freezing is not right for everyone, but without information, no woman can make an informed consent. And we hope today that what we are here for is to allow you to share with your readers this relatable topic, making it relevant to all women. So I would like to start by asking our first speaker, Julie Neckerbroek, about the societal pressures felt by women today and how these pressures have increased in the last 10 years. Julie.
Thank you. I will tell you a bit more about the pressures that women between their 20s and 30s face nowadays and how they have evolved the last decades. I've been working for about 10 years now as a psychologist at the Center for Reproductive Medicine, and I practically see daily women who want to freeze their eggs. And what is striking is that, in fact, the profile of these women hasn't changed that much over the past 10 years. So I still meet women around 36, 37 years of age with high educational levels. They have a career and they are proud to admit that they have one. But when I ask them, why do you not have children yet? Then a vast majority states that's because I haven't met the right partner yet. So we see in this population a lot of relational struggling. They mention that partners do not live up to their expectations, that partners were not ideal to have a child with in the past. Also, often it is mentioned or relationships break up because there is a discrepancy in the desire for a child between men and women. So these women are faced with a lot of pressure, a lot of time pressure. They have the sense that they have to accomplish a lot of important life goals, all comprised between the age of 30 and 40. So they have to find the right job, they have to launch their career, they have to find the right partner, preferably have two genetically linked children with that partner and still look young and vital when performing all that. So we could blame emancipation. It's true that women pursue educational, personal and professional goals, and that they have become economically independent of men. So this also leads to a delay in childbearing now around age 30 or even higher. Before, let's say that women and also men entered straight from adolescence into adulthood by assuming stable roles in love and in work. And nowadays we have the age of the emerging adulthood, let's say. So it's a phase in life that is linked to Western industrialized countries where women have an easy access to tertiary education. And it goes from age 18 till the late 20s. So, and in that period, women and men take time to explore their identities. What do I want in life? What are my capabilities? What are my limitations, norms, values? So there's a lot of self-focus, there's a lot of individualism. Everything is thought through, from whether I will become a vegetarian or whether I will get married or not, or at what age might I have my children. In that age, people also tend to feel a bit in between. They don't feel like an adolescent, but they don't feel totally grown up either. So there's a lot of instability in the sense that a lot of moving in and out with the parents is occurring after studies, after a relationship breakup. And it's also called the age of the possibilities. Everything seems to be open, everything could be possible because nothing has been really tested in real life. So with this phase of emerging adulthood popping up, it also causes a delay, of course, or a shift in the accomplishment of the important life goals. Then what I also noticed during the consultation is that women tell often about specific preconditions that they want to meet before they get into motherhood. So to my sense, they sometimes are a bit waiting too long for the ideal moment to come. In the sense that they, of course, want to be personal ready, that the relationship has to be good as well. They expect to have a relationship with the ideal partner, that the ideal economical situation is present, and that there is a good healthcare provision. So this, of course, also affects the timing of parenthood and may possibly jeopardize it. All these factors are embedded in a societal context. I guess, where social media presents the picture perfect of a lot of women and show us how good they are on schedule or even ahead on schedule. There is also the technology companies that are hinting that you should freeze your eggs in order to prioritize your career goals. The upper age limit for natural conception is also sometimes falsely portrayed by media. And women also talk about workplace inflexibility. And all that adds to the reproductive dilemma, of course. So I think that's where egg freezing comes in. Egg freezing might be able to bridge the gap between reproductive prime and when women feel realistically ready to have their child, just by simply allowing them to buy more time to find that suitable partner, so they don't have to rush into unhappy marriages or unwanted childlessness or single motherhood. So these things all play in an important role. What we also see is that when women have frozen their eggs, they tell about a greater peace of mind that they experience. They have a sense of reassurance that if a suitable partner comes along, that they still have some options in the freezer. So for many women it is an empowering experience. They have the sense that they have more control on their family planning. And what also is noticed and confirmed also in research is that there are very few decisional regrets. So the majority of the women who froze eggs state that they would definitely do it again, that they are happy that they froze the eggs even though they sometimes think that they might not need them, because of course that would mean that they have found the right partner, that they are in a stable relationship, that all these preconditions have been met. So, and that brings us a little bit to, and also an important topic, I think, of the low utilization rates so far. At our center, for instance, only few women came back to actually use these vitrified oocytes. It's around 7.6%. In other centers, it may go up to 10-12%, but it's still quite low. So I think we can ask ourselves whether women will actually be able to benefit from egg freezing and use it for what they intended to use it, namely to buy more time and to find that suitable partner to found a family with that man. So in that context, I think it's important to keep on mentioning the process of informed consent. We need to give these women plenty of information, preferably individualized, age-specific, so that on the basis of that they can make realistic expectations and also choose whether it would be useful for them to freeze or not to freeze.
I was particularly interested. There were 2 points that really struck me when we were talking earlier. The first is that we hear all these assumptions that women are career power women, power dressing, big shoulder pads, not interested in a partner, hard, the devil wears Prada, that sort of thing. But actually, I'm really interested in this idea that it's not so much that they do have careers, but I'm getting the impression they would be prepared to put them on hold if they had the right man. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that is often confirmed during consultation, that they state that if I would have met the right partner, of course I already would have children with that partner.
And then the other point you raised related to this lack of regret combined with the low utilization rate. I suppose from my perspective, I see this as a sort of win-win situation, because if you don't need to use your eggs, it's maybe because you've met the right man and you've had the babies, but at the same time, you still knew that they were there if you needed them. Absolutely. So if you do need them, they're there, but if you don't need them, it's a reassurance
Yeah.
that if you, that they would be there if you didn't find the right man.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course, we do not know what happened to all these other women who did not come back to use their vitrified oocytes. It's possible that they have found the right partner, that they got pregnant with regular IVF or the natural way. So, and I really do hope, of course. That the majority has gone through that path. Yeah.
Can I start with you, if I may, Joyce? You've been in this business, if I may say, a long time. How has the process of fertility changed in the last few decades?
Well, as you said, the age of first birth globally has increased, and that's one thing reflected in our fertility unit. So the women that are coming in are, on average, older now than they used to be. So if we look globally, the success rates of fertility treatment have not gone up hugely overall, but they are very dependent on the age of the woman. This is the whole reason for freezing the eggs.
So the fertility procedures would be, compared to the fertility procedures 20 years ago, if done on a woman of the same age as 20 years ago, they'd be much more successful. The reason that they're not much more successful is largely because those women are older.
Yes, so that's one of the points for sure. Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. And what concerns do you think? What priorities are women having today? We've heard from Julie about those concerns. Does that ring a bell, what she was saying with you?
It's absolutely that people live very different lives now, and men are fertile almost their whole life, if not their whole life.
Yeah.
There's a slight decrease, but we all know many men who have fathered children in their 60s and 70s, lots of celebrities and pop stars that have done this. So it is possible, but for women that's not possible without using a donor egg, or maybe in the future a frozen egg. So the problem for women is that we have our biological clock ticking away from the minute we're born or before, and men don't. So if you have a couple who are 35, the guy doesn't need to start a family now. He can still be doing all his wonderful life choices that he is now able to do and enjoy his career and travel, etc. But his partner will be ticking down quite rapidly at that age. So we really need to ensure that men and women from a very young age are educated in fertility and understand. And I do think
we'll come back to that later.
Yeah,
we will come back to that later.
I think that will change their views.
I'm going to come to you, Elisa, because education and fertility is a hugely important issue. And you, of course, are the perfect informed patient. Nobody could make a more informed decision. So I'd love to know from you, what made you make the decision to freeze your eggs?
Well, in the consult, I see every day a woman who say, "Why nobody said it to me before?" And they cry a lot because nobody has explained it before to them. So that was my decision. When I took my decision was when I realized that I was older than my patient and I had no children. And I said, okay, it's my turn. I don't want to regret not having done this. That was the moment when I decided to do that. And I have done it twice because the experience was very nice and was easy for me. I worked all the day, and at the end of the day, I went to the theater room, and the retrieval was made. And then the next day, I work again, so no problem with me. And I say to my patient, and I say to my colleagues, and I say to my friends, okay, why not? One of the first treatments I made when I started in fertility was my sister. So, wow. I'm very sure about that, and I'm very proud of this.
So let's hear a little bit more about the practicalities. I'm going to come to you, if I may, Valerie, but I'd like you to explain, if you would. Most people do think of midwives as being women who, mostly women. There are male midwives, other genders do apply, but women who look after women who are in the process of giving birth, or maybe in the antenatal period. Tell me about your role.
Yes, so I'm a midwife, and I'm working in a fertility center since many years. And I met women almost after the gynaecologist consultation. So I am involved to inform patients about the process. And sometimes women who came to us are a little bit afraid, a little bit nervous, especially if they come for medical reasons, because they are afraid of the procedure. And I can meet also women who are very active because they have get a lot of information in media or everywhere, and they know why they are asking for preservation. And they come there and they said, I want to do that because I know it's the right decision for me, because I have not yet find a partner for my to build a family, or because of my career, it's necessary for me to have this insurance. So we are there to counsel them, to try to inform them for the process, but also for the risk of the procedure, and also that it's not always successful, and they have to be aware of all the conditions.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So speaking of the other things that you need to prepare people for, Julie, do you need to assess, are you assessing these women for their psychological suitability for egg freezing?
Yes, of course. Also, the guidelines for counseling on infertility are very clear on that. Women who use fertility services for non-medical reasons should get implication decision-making counseling so that they are well aware of the risks and the limitations. And women who also are at risk, of course, for high distress or might already have a higher level of distress need to be seen also by a counselor or a psychologist. And then, of course, in general, we need to check for psychopathology, use of psychotropic drugs, etc., because all this can put a strain on the entire process, first of informed consent, but also later on the impact of the treatment, the coping with stress caused by the treatment. All these things will be quite different if women are suffering from psychiatric diseases, etc.
So do you ever have to make a recommendation that a woman should not proceed with egg freezing?
Yes, sometimes we do, yeah. We have to, we discuss it, of course, but we think of the welfare of the child, even though there's no egg yet in the freezer. But we have the right to say that, okay, in this condition, it is not a wise thing to add some hormones, to add an IVF treatment and possibly a pregnancy. So sometimes this has to be said. Yeah.
Let's go back to the practicalities. How long can you freeze eggs for? Are there limits to how long they're viable, how successful procedures are if they've been stored for longer?
Well, vitrification's only been around for about 15 years, so we don't really know, but there should be no reason, technical reason, why they shouldn't be 20, 30 years. But some countries have put an arbitrary 10-year limit on storage.
And what about the most exciting developments? I mean, you've talked about vitrification. Is that, to you, the most exciting development or what else is there out there in terms of developments for fertility preservation?
Well, for egg freezing, it certainly was. I would have also frozen my eggs when I was younger, but it wasn't around. I kept saying, I can't wait till it's around. And unfortunately, I went through 5 years of IVF treatment because I hadn't frozen my eggs and I started trying to get pregnant at 35. Wow. So I know, personally, I would have had a much shorter journey if I'd have frozen my eggs at 25.
Yeah.
But there's also ovarian tissue freezing, which is mainly used for patients that have got cancer, for various reasons, but there's only been there's different suggestions, but about 100, 130 births from ovarian tissue freezing worldwide. So it's still really considered quite a new procedure, but I have heard a number of people suggest that they should use this procedure for social reasons. You wouldn't need to go through IVF, you would freeze the ovarian tissue and then replace it when the woman wanted to get pregnant, and then she would hopefully have a natural conception.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to come back to you, Elisa, if I may, because you clearly, funnily enough, from the day job, knew all about this procedure. how important is it that other women think about egg freezing and are informed about the options? Did that really make a difference to you, the fact that you knew so much about it?
It's absolutely important day to know about that. We have to talk about this not only in the consulta, but only in the cafe, in our free time, with our friends, with our colleagues, with our family, in the Christmas party. You know, we have to talk about this like a normal thing. We are making a normal thing now.
I just have this vision of the women in one corner at the Christmas party discussing egg freezing and the men at the bar. I love that idea. But I mean, I agree. How do we broaden out the conversation? Because there are so many misconceptions.
I think we have to start in schools.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky in the UK. I'll be talking about our work on the fertility education later. But we're very lucky that in February, the Department of Education in the UK has finally put the word fertility in our documents. It didn't exist in the documents before. We're working on trying to get the word menopause in, but we have got the word fertility in. So now we are embarking on a lot of work to get that conversation started. And I think that will be the grounding of then moving forward and hopefully broadening, because there are many women who really do not understand about their fertility decline or think because they see celebrities having children in their late 40s and 50s, this is fine for me, it will happen.
Even more, sometimes doctors don't know about that. Gynaecologists don't know about that. Yeah. So we have to educate them also.
I'm interested actually because certainly as a GP, as a generalist, my perception until, unless I'm doing things like this, my understanding of the risks of egg freezing, the risks of IVF, is basically stuck in the year that I qualified, which was 30 years ago. So I think, doctors absolutely, but the public as well. I love this idea of starting with children.
Yes, because I think also that student or young women before 20-25 do not know anything about fertility.
It's actually really interesting you say that, because my perception is that women spend the first 10, 15 years of their reproductive life having this message hammered home to them, double Dutch, use 2 methods of contraception to be completely serious, never have unprotected sex, don't drink because you're more likely to be, the emergency contraceptive pill is not just for the morning after, all these messages about not getting pregnant. And yet they never, by the time they start thinking about it, they assume, certainly my patients, they've been in charge of everything in their lives before. You've never had to worry about, they take it for granted that if they want to go on to higher education, they can. They take it for granted that if they study hard enough, they will be a success. They take it for granted that if they want to have sex without having children, they can do it. They take it for granted that if they want to move on in their career, if they work hard enough, etc., that they won't be discriminated against. And suddenly, this is the first time fertility that they're being told, no, there are no guarantees. It's an interesting time. Now, speaking of guarantees, Valerie, I'd like to come to you because I know you work in France, and I believe that in France at the moment,
Yes.
there is, women are only permitted to have egg preservation for medical reasons. Yeah. Joyce referred to social. I prefer the term non-medical reasons. I think it's yes. I think social is, I don't know, non-medical. Some women really feel very strongly that they want to preserve their fertility. It's not a social, it's an evolutionary imperative inside them. But I think that might be going to change later this year in France.
Yes, I think that Emmanuel Macron, when he was elected, told to us that it was one of his goals to allow IVF procedure to single woman or to lesbian woman, and for that it will be allowed to go to IVF and to go to egg preservation when you have no partner.
How big a change was that?
It's a real big change, but we have to discuss a lot with people and with the mind, because in France we have a sort of we are late, and we are very. It's very low to progress.
Yeah.
But
I think conservative with a small very small c.
But I think it's important because a lot of women are coming and asking to have some egg preservation, and for the moment they are obliged to go to Belgium, England, and other countries in Europe. So we have to do something for them.
Mm-hmm. So when this does come in France, and of course already in Belgium, when a woman does freeze her eggs, does that really allow her to relax, or does it just increase the pressure? Okay, I've got the eggs, now I've got to do something about it.
Well, let's say that for many women it kind of alleviates more the pressure. They have the sense of having this plan B in the freezer. And it's not that they stop dating right away. So it's like they keep on engaging in the search for that suitable partner. In that sense, they sometimes even tell me that after they've frozen their eggs, they can actually see the person in front of them, and they're not screening their date for a possible fatherhood or possible donorship. So they also with that, it opens a bit their perspectives, let's say.
Very interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that. And I suppose, when I have couples who are trying for a baby, it stops being fun. It's all about, ring your husband up, the thermometer's there, get upstairs, the rest of the time go away, I'm waiting for the thermometer. I think it's a big, that is they can enjoy forming, building a relationship and maybe more successfully as a result. Should genetic screening be part of the preparatory workup for women considering screening?
So there's a lot of discussion. Do you mean genetic screening of the woman before or genetic screening of her egg?
Either or both.
So genetic screening is one of those procedures where it sounds very sexy. So people want to do this high tech and look at the genes. It's really the buzzwords. But at the moment, screening the woman or screening her eggs gives us really quite limited information. So I'm sure in the future, I'm sure we were at a meeting on Friday about everyone having their genome sequenced, and I'm sure this technology will come in. But at the moment, it's quite limited of the information it will give us. There is a company that says that they can check a woman's fertility by looking at her genome, but it's very early days. They're only looking at some very specific disorders that she probably would already know about before she had the test done. So it's not here yet.
No. Lisa, some people talk about egg freezing as an insurance policy, but of course you're a doctor. You've made it very clear, and we must all make it very clear to women that with an insurance, if there's a problem, it definitely pays out. And we can't guarantee that. Is that an issue? Was that an issue for you?
Yes, it is, but I have accepted that. You have to explain it too carefully to the patient that, okay, don't be so calm. We don't know what is going to happen in the future. Maybe you will have a partner without spermatozoides, or maybe your eggs are not quality eggs, so we are not sure it's going to work, but it's the only thing that we have.
But still much better than not doing it, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So maybe reassurance rather than insurance?
Yeah.
A good way of putting it?
Yes.
Okay. Valerie, do the women that you see worry about whether their eggs will result in pregnancy? Is this a big issue for them?
I think that the most important thing for them is to have some eggs. And I don't know if they think of the baby after. I think that, yes, it's an insurance, and if they do not succeed to have a natural conception after, they have these eggs. But it's eggs. I don't know if it's really a baby for them.
Mm-hmm. I think more from a psychological point of view, just the fact of taking action, taking advantage of all possible reproductive technologies is a very rewarding thing, rather than doing nothing. And this points more to an active coping. Even the result is not guaranteed or stays away.
They think that they have tried something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are there medical restrictions on egg freezing?
So you've mentioned some already. There may be some patients who have had some, for example, breast cancer. That's where we might opt for ovarian tissue, but that's even quite complicated. So there are some women that have medical reasons. But for me, the most important thing is their age.
Yeah.
So I was in Greece recently, and they have one of the highest ages of first conception. And they said that in one of the clinics, the majority of women coming for egg freezing are in their 40s. And they had a woman who was 48, and she could not understand. She thought, this is a given. I'm having my eggs frozen, yes. And the doctor said, no. We in IVF, we do not have births over 45 in IVF. It just doesn't happen. And that's with fresh eggs. And they should be comparable. That's what the data is showing. But you wouldn't freeze a woman's 48 eggs. It's pointless.
So you've mentioned age, clearly a major factor, but we also know in terms of conceiving naturally that other lifestyle factors, whether it's being overweight, smoking, having type 2 diabetes, which of course is related to weight, all of these things can have a significant impact on your likelihood of getting pregnant. Do we know anything about whether this has an impact on the viability, on the success of egg freezing?
People do like to talk about a fertility diet, but the really conclusive data at the moment is obesity. So obesity will definitely have an effect. So in the UK, to get NHS treatment, you have to have a normal BMI. Yeah. So that's the most studied and conclusive data.
And when you say a normal BMI, you mean up to 30? So
yes.
Below you can be overweight but not obese?
Yes.
Because 2/3 of the UK population are overweight or obese. So it's a big
issue. Yeah.
It's a big, pardon the pun. Okay. I'm going to ask you, this is one that coming from France, I think is an important one. Should women be able to expect to freeze their eggs as a right?
In my unit, we are able to take care of women with medical reasons, and we have made a sort of agreement with the woman, and because we know in the study that it's not always a success, the agreement is to obtain almost 15 eggs in 2 or 3 cycles, no more 3 cycles, because it's a very hard procedure, and we cannot make it 10 times. So we have this agreement, and if at the first cycle they obtain lows at 3 or 4 oocytes, we are going to inform them that perhaps they must stop because it's not any it's a too low number. But I think that, like in contraception, like in medical abortion, like IVF, women perhaps in the future could say that it's a right because, for example, I think that already men who have vasectomy can preserve spermatozoid before vasectomy. So it's not really a medical reason because they have made vasectomy like a contraception. Yeah. So why women, because they are going to have 35 for age, and why they do not have the possibility to preserve? So I think that we must be aware of this opinion.
Elisa, would you agree? You were nodding there?
Absolutely. I think it's a right for us. I think it's our second opportunity. The first one was in the 60s with the contraception. We decided not to have children, and now we can decide when to have children. So for me, it's an opportunity and it is a right.
But of course, that brings the issue of cost.
Yes, absolutely.
Who should bear the cost? Should
Silence.
Insurance bear the cost? Should the National Health Service? Should women consider this a privilege rather than a right and be prepared to pay themselves? Should society be paying for women to preserve their fertility?
I feel that we can make the choice, but I would worry if this became the norm. and that women, certainly it is going to be women of a certain demographic, career women, educated women, and I worry if this group of women all start freezing their eggs, all delay their fertility, some of them are still not going to be successful because they are relying on this. So I would worry, to be honest, about, I would have frozen my eggs for sure, but I worry about the next few years if this did become a normal procedure for this group of women. What I would prefer is that in the workplace and in society, we understand our biological limitations and that we try to give support for having children at a reasonable age, naturally. Naturally. So I would worry about every career woman freezing her eggs and medicalising, I call it, her reproduction rather than natural.
It's interesting because we have placed great focus quite appropriately on the fact that women cannot assume that this procedure will be successful, that it will guarantee a healthy baby. But then neither does natural conception. And I think a lot of my patients don't realise this. You know, they come in, they've been trying, but I've been trying for 3 months. Yeah, and? No, there's nothing wrong with me. I want to get pregnant. It doesn't work like that. I think this is a big thing, huh?
But I think women, we're not taught about our fertile window. If we are taught anything at school, we're taught how not to get pregnant and how not to get a sexually transmitted infection. Not how to get pregnant, how to have a healthy pregnancy, what age to do this. So I think this is the key message of fertility education in schools, teaching women to understand their bodies. As you said, that they're either spending their fertile years trying not to get pregnant or trying to get pregnant. That's the only two options that they're doing. So do we really understand when our fertile window is? We understand when our period comes, but I think it's important to educate women about understanding, no matter if they're trying to or not to get pregnant, to understand how their body works in their fertile window.
Yes, of course. I think it's important to introduce in sexuality courses to students how to get pregnant, how does it work? Because for sure they have a lot of information about contraception.
Yes.
Now we can pass because women want to have a long career, and because of the professional issue, because it's important for women to have a good career, because they want to be equal to men. But to be equal, we have also to the right and the possibility to get pregnant when we want to be pregnant.
And we have to educate the boys and the men. It's two people involved here. So I know it's affecting us. We have to make sure everyone understands this.
So at the Christmas party, it has to be the men.
All together,
for sure.
Now, speaking of educating the men, you mentioned that a lot of the women you see, Julie, are single women who haven't found the right man, but there are women who are in a stable relationship. You said maybe there's a mismatch. The woman is thinking about fertility, the man isn't. Are there any different psychological issues you have to think about if a woman is in a stable relationship compared to single?
Yeah, we will of course ask how come that it's not possible to have a child in this relationship at this moment, and what we also want to know, whether egg freezing is a shared project. Did the woman discuss it with her partner? Does he see possible benefits for his career, for instance? Because we've been talking about perhaps the career women opting for egg freezing, but I also often see women who freeze their eggs in function of the career of their husbands. So all these things we would of course want to find out. It's also possible that the discrepancy is too big on what the child desire is concerned, and that egg freezing is more a way of letting this partner go and go their own way. So it can be the beginning of the end of a relationship as well.
And do you ever have women who are in a stable relationship but do not want their partner to know that they are freezing their eggs? What happens psychologically?
Yeah, of course, then we have to explain that it will be very hard to hide it from the partner, because you will have some hormone injections lying in your fridge. So you would have to go out for the egg retrieval, etc. So they need to be aware of the fact that if you want to hide it, that you have to do it. That you have to do your best. Yeah. Voilà. So yes, but it happens that some men are not aware. On the other hand, but it's more in let's say fresh relationships. Women do not explain it to a partner they just have met, because they don't want to scare him.
Okay.
They don't want to bring up the subject of child desire, because they are scared that the man will run away because he hasn't the same idea about having children. So somewhere I also see it as women sometimes are not ashamed but uncomfortable with the fact that they would want to have children, and they do not want to pressure the man that they are dating at that moment. So,
and perhaps again we're back to this idea of education, because maybe if men were educated in school when they were boys, then they might understand a little bit more.
Absolutely. They don't know about the fertile window, that's for sure. Yeah.
Elisa, you were nodding a lot when I talked about a woman who did not want her partner to know. Tell me about your perception, maybe as a healthcare professional.
It is frequent, this situation. When in my first time, I vitrified when I had a boyfriend, but I was not very sure about that relationship. I was young. Well, I thought I was young. I was 33.
You were young.
I thought I was young.
You're still young.
And the main reason was that I did not feel very comfortable in that relationship, and it is the real thing that happens in the consult, I think, also. And there are many women who come and don't say anything to their partners.
Now it's interesting because Julie brought up this fascinating concept of, sometimes making the decision to have egg freezing is the beginning of the end of the relationship.
Yeah.
Is this?
Yes, it is.
In your situation? Okay.
You realize something does not work well. I think it's the beginning of the end. Yes.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So, Valérie, let's just come back to you. Do you think that women who are coming in for egg freezing are about the right age? Should they, when they come to you, do they wish that they were younger? They wish they'd done it sooner?
Yes, of course. I think that when they arrive at the center and when we inform them that perhaps it's too late because they have a low reserve, ovarian reserve, they are very anxious and very disappointed, because we told them that if they come earlier, it was better, it will be better. So I think that the information, of course, to boy, girl, young lady and young man, it's important, but also to gynaecologist or doctor, to say that you have to inform, and perhaps media can inform also that, all right, as we say, Madonna and what else have some child, but we don't know how. And for a lot of women, they didn't say that they came by IVF or by egg donation. Now, if they want to have a baby, perhaps it's better to come before 35. Yeah. 35 is really important.
And tell me, until what age can a woman, in theory, use frozen eggs to conceive?
There are obstetric risks for older mothers. So different countries in Europe and across the world have different age limits, but obstetrically we have to be very careful of women past their normal reproductive years, so 45 and over. There have been some women in their 60s who have used egg.
Italy, is that?
Yes, I didn't want to mention it. They really brought in strict rules because of a couple of particular clinics that were doing this, right. And they were using egg donation. So this is really not recommended. This for many reasons, but including the welfare of the child. And some of these women are in their 60s and single. In our hospital, we have 3 women at the moment over 50 that have had egg donation, and 2 of them are single. And I just think that we have to think about the interests of the child, but obstetrically for the woman as well.
It's interesting you say that, because I was going to ask about that. I'm going to ask all of you, actually, what are the ethical considerations if you had to think of one major ethical issue? Elisa, let's start with you.
Yeah, we have to think about our health and the health of the babies and who is going to bring them up. So we have to not be very selfish in this. There are some women who feel selfish when they do that. So yes, there are very difficult ethical issues in this world. We have to discuss about that.
Yeah, I think also indeed the welfare of the child should be always a top priority. And of course, little is known about the health of children born after use of vitrified oocytes. That's one part, but then indeed also more the psychological part where, older mothers, okay, there are some advantages because usually there is more financial stability, you know what you want in life, you have time to raise your child, etc. But on the other hand, in our center, for instance, we want people to hopefully live at least for 20 years more so that they can give a minimum of education and raise their child to more or less a stable adult. So,
and of course, if there's only one parent and they're older, the likelihood is lower. Valérie, what about you?
I think that we have to be aware also to the obstetric risk because a pregnancy after 40, 45, 50 is very complicated and they maybe have no the possibility to have the baby, healthcare baby or with good health. So it's very important to inform them.
Of course, we no longer implant 8 eggs, so we don't have the issue of multiple pregnancies, so the risks, the obstetric risks do go down, Joyce.
Yes, and actually the biggest problem with twin pregnancies now is actually from egg donation. But if you've got frozen eggs, then you could absolutely put them back one at a time. So there'd be absolutely no reason to have a twin pregnancy.
Yes, we have to avoid multiple pregnancy. Certainly.
Twins in terms of risks are high, but anything more is even higher. And what about a woman who's gone through premature menopause? Can she use eggs, those frozen eggs, to conceive after she's gone through maybe premature ovarian failure, indeed, under the age of 40? Can she use those eggs?
So if she's frozen her eggs before the major hormonal change has happened, then interestingly, this is why we have women in their 60s carrying their child. Our womb stays fertile. It's totally amazing. It's something I thought when a woman was postmenopausal, this womb would just shrink and become like a raisin, but it doesn't. It's still fertile. So we're very lucky for women with premature ovarian failure. If they've frozen their eggs, they absolutely should. There might be some circumstances where they can't, but the majority would be able to carry their own child.
Elisa, what advice would you give to a woman who was considering freezing her eggs?
The first thing they have to think is that for us, maternity should be early. It's the very most important thing in this issue. And if it is not possible, you have this opportunity just to delay it a little bit. Always with common sense, and you have to do it early. The main advice is you have to make it before 36. Many days ago, a woman 42 years old, she came to the consultant and said, "Okay, I'm thinking about having or not a child, so maybe I would like to preserve my eggs now." I said, "Oh no. This is not the moment now." Okay. Why not? This is not the moment now. So the main advice is make it early. And with common sense.
Common sense, indeed. And what about if the procedure is not successful? You know, so you've mentioned that sometimes you have poor quality, but what about if it doesn't succeed at all? How do women feel? What happens then? Julie, from a psychological perspective, perhaps.
It can be very devastating, of course. The prior concern is, will it still be able to be possible to freeze my eggs or not? So, and if it doesn't work, then sometimes the doctor has to say, okay, the only chance for you to have a child is to use the sperm bank and try to have one now on your own then. So this is really very much distressing, because it's really with a knife on your throat that you would have to decide whether I still want to try to have a genetically related child, or do I just continue to wait for that partner and use donor eggs. So for these women it's a very hard trajectory that is waiting for them, that they have to find out what are they going to give their priority to.
You are there at the moment, of course. What do you say to
these women?
I
think that when we have in front of us a woman like in this situation, the most important thing is to tell her that to find the door, an open door. And the open door could be egg donation, an open door could be, it's difficult, but adoption, but an open door could be perhaps you will realize a good life without a child. Perhaps you must not be in front of a wall. You have to find some light somewhere and go to that light, because of course it's important for her because she came there to have a child, but perhaps she can find another solution to realize her life in a good way. So always find another solution, another way to go.
So before we finish, our time is nearly at an end. I'm going to ask each of you, if I may, if you had to give one message to our audience, just one, what would it be about egg freezing and about what you would like them to take away?
For me, I'm repeating the common sense is the main thing here.
Okay. Short and sweet. Julie?
Yeah, I think that if you're at the beginning of your 30s and you find yourself without a partner but with a desire for a child, I think it's a really valuable option, and it can open some perspectives, of course. I also think that because many women struggle with these relationships, that it's wise sometimes to reflect upon that, to check how come that I always fall for the guy that doesn't want to have children. That can also be something to consider, of course. At the end of the day, you still need to be lucky in love as well. Freezing is one thing, but I think the relationships, finding the partner is something that we cannot control, even less than the chances of having a child after freezing.
Elisa, Julie has referred to if you are not in a relationship but you want to have a child, if you're going to do it early. I think many of my patients at 30 don't know if they want to have a child. Should we be looking at for them as well, teaching them that you may not know now, but the time may come when you change your mind?
Yeah.
I think the clock ticks suddenly. It just kicks in some women much stronger than others.
Yeah, I guess I need to say it perhaps differently if you think you might ever want to have one, so that would be better. So, okay.
Valérie?
Yes, I think the important thing is a good information to young women, and because they have to know what is the clock, and they have to have the reflection if they are or not a partner, if they want to have the baby now or after, and to check all the possibility, natural conception, egg freezing, and we can offer a lot of things to those women, so they have to be informed, very well informed.
Joyce, your one message?
For me, age 30 to 35 is critical, and we really need to get that information to women. And if they're going to freeze their eggs, I'd really love it if everyone was under 35.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a wonderful, wide-ranging discussion, and I really hope that women across Europe will, as a result of today, gain more knowledge and be in a better position to make an informed consent about the topic of fertility preservation. But I also hope that we've cleared up a few of those very, very common misconceptions that there are out there. Just for more information, I would recommend visiting fertilitychoices.com. And with that, it remains only for me to say an enormous thank you to our panel.
Thank you.
And thank you to you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.